to the #1 Raiders podcast in the world. My name is Stephen Michaels. This is the Raiders Daily. I know I've been gone for a little while, haven't been doing a podcast, but I'm still around daily all the time on the Raiders Daily Elite, which is a subscription service for all of my fans. I do video shows throughout the week. That's why I really haven't had time to do a podcast. And it's the off season. I figured, you know what, I should wait a little while since I know this free agency has been crazy. Might as well wait for a lot of names to be called, a lot of names to be picked up by the best general manager in football in 2019, Mike Mayock. Listen, when John Gruden took this job, he really wasn't going to do a complete rebuild. He was going to retool the roster, but once Khalil Mack got traded, John Gruden got those draft picks. He looked at the roster. He said, listen, this team isn't really good. He knows 2016 was basically a fluke. I mean, go back and watch those games. They're winning by, 2-point conversions and a lot of calls. Penalties went their way. Derek Carr got away with a ton of interceptions. And then you look at 2017. That's how you know that 2016 was a fluke. Look at them. They're terrible. They're awful. This team's been terrible for a long time. Even in that 12-win season, their defense was terrible. They won with basically shootouts. That's how they won all those games, because their defense was that bad. So John Gruden is, without a doubt, rebuilding this team with his own players. Mike Mayock is rebuilding this team with his own players. And the first way to do this is, first of all, they had to draft last year, so they have some guys in place. The hope is those guys take the next step, and sometimes they do. So a guy like Mo Hurst, a guy like P.J. Hall, a guy like Nick Nelson, maybe, just maybe Chris Warren is better at blocking, and he can be an actual player, be on the actual 53-man roster, play on Sundays. That is the hope. But you got a lot of guys from last year the Raiders are hoping take the next step. Guys like Arden Key, will he get bigger and stronger? Because we all see that this guy can get after the quarterback. It's just the fact of getting him down that he had a hard time doing last season. And listen, this defense, like I said, it's been terrible for years. Even when they had Jack Del Rio, who is a defensive guy, as a head coach, the defense still sucks. Now, I know Jack Del Rio is on TV every other day now, just spouting out about the Raiders. He hates the Raiders. He's bitter about the Raiders. He's a player's coach. He thinks this Antonio Brown thing's going to be terrible. He's going to say whatever he can. But what I don't understand about this guy is he acts like, Antonio Brown. Oh, Gruden's not going to be able to handle that. Oh, my goodness. Listen, this is the same guy, Jack Del Rio, okay? The same exact coach that let the players walk all over him. Hey, you want to skip practice, Bruce Irvin? Go ahead. Hey, you want to skip film study? Go ahead. Hey, you want to take today off? It's Wednesday. Yeah, let's call it Woodson Wednesday, after Charles Woodson, even though the guy's not even there. Let's just call it Woodson Wednesday. Everyone's taking a day off, and Jack Del Rio couldn't do a damn thing about it. Jack Del Rio is supposed to be the defensive guru. He brings in Ken Norton Jr. He makes Ken Norton Jr. run Jack Del Rio's defense. And what does he do? He fires Ken Norton Jr. for running Jack Del Rio's defense. Jack Del Rio should have fired himself. That's what really should have happened. So Mark Davis, of course, as you know, he's been trying to get John Gruden back for a long time. And even after that 12-win season, if John Gruden would have said in 2017, hey, I will return, guess what? Jack Del Rio gets no extension. Jack Del Rio's fired on the spot, because this has been Mark Davis's dream for the Raiders since he took over. Getting John Gruden out of the broadcast booth and on the sidelines, and now he got him. but Gruden's going to want to win with his own players. And that's why they are rebuilding. And Mike Mayock and John Gruden, they have been doing everything right. They brought in the best of the best. They brought in players that have something to prove. Players that have a chip on their shoulders. To bona fide stars like Antonio Brown. The list of players they brought in is unbelievable. And we still got a draft coming. We still got a draft where the Raiders have 4 picks in the top 35. It's unbelievable what Mike Mayock has been able to do. It really is. When you go through the names, first of all, they re-signed the key guys they needed to re-sign. Guys like Jonathan Hankins, who's, he's a solid defensive lineman. Bring him back. But then when you look at guys like Tyrell Williams, even though they got Antonio Brown, and they thought, hey, if we get Antonio Brown, we don't get Tyrell Williams. That's what the Raiders were thinking at that time, because they had Tyrell Williams ranked number 1 as far as wide receivers in free agency. Somehow, this team managed not only to get Antonio Brown, and listen, let's just address the elephant in the room here. Antonio Brown, yes, is crazy. Yes, he's a little bit wacky on social media. I'm not going to defend all that. The only thing I care about with Antonio Brown is if he shows up at practice and he plays hard on Sundays. That's the only thing I care about. I don't care what he does on social media. It really makes no difference to me. Now, I know it makes, headlines on those talking head shows with Shannon Sharp, if you can understand him, and the Dracula, Skip Bayless. I understand. It gives them talking points to talk about Antonio Brown's Instagram stuff. But really, do you think John Gruden really cares? You think he really, really cares? I know they want John Gruden to care, but guess what? John Gruden doesn't care. John Gruden has seen what Antonio Brown does in practice. He has watched this guy on film during game days. Antonio Brown is the best wide receiver in the NFL. And the Raiders only had to give a 3rd and a 5th for the guy. They won, but people just don't want to admit that. So they want to, throw this stuff out. Look at Antonio Brown, he's crazy. What are the Raiders going to do? Listen, to all you Raider fans, I can promise you this. Antonio Brown is going to be on his best behavior year 1, year 2, and probably year 3. He's getting paid. He is not going to be a problem. Don't worry what he does on Instagram. Now, back to these free agents. These free agent pickups. Tyrell Williams. They didn't think they were going to be able to get him after they got Antonio Brown. They paid Antonio Brown. They still end up getting Tyrell Williams, who is really probably the most underrated wide receiver in the National Football League. This guy, remember, played with the Chargers, played with Phillip Rivers. Remember, the Chargers have Keenan Allen, so that guy wants the ball a lot. Phillip Rivers constantly throwing into Keenan Allen. Meanwhile, Tyrell Williams, he was a guy that the Raiders coaches can see on film, constantly open, constantly grinding, constantly trying to be the best. Now the Raiders got him. The Raiders, in one free agency, built up the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. That wide receiver room is impressive. You got Antonio Brown. You got Tyrell Williams. You got J.J. Nelson, someone who's very under the radar. Someone who can beat you with speed. This guy he is fast as hell. And then, to top it all off, you get rid of Seth Roberts. The confetti falls down. Everyone celebrates. Seth Roberts is gone. Yes, they lose Jared Cook. He goes to the New Orleans Saints where he got overpaid. But Jared Cook, I believe, will have a great season with the New Orleans Saints. No bad blood there. I hope he does well there. But the Raiders got to move on in that direction. Jared Cook, I'm sorry, he's 32 years old. The Raiders weren't going to pay him $9 million guaranteed. Just not going to happen. But when you look at everything else this team has done, like I said, they also bring in Trent Brown, the best offensive lineman in free agency. I mean, this is remarkable. The Raiders bring in the best of the best And they bring in guys with chip on their shoulders that are ready to show the world. They got a lot of guys on 1-year prove-it-to-me deals, and those are the guys you want on your team. Because they know the agents aren't stupid. They sign 1-year deals for a reason. First of all, you got a prove-it-to-me deal. Second of all, if these guys are doing well, mid-season, they get a 2-year extension, and they get paid in Las Vegas where there's no taxes. That's the smart way to do it. That's why the Raiders have been working with Drew Rosenhaus so much, because he's the smartest agent in the entire NFL. There's no secret behind that. So the Raiders go out and they say, okay, we need a lot of help on defense. We fixed our offensive line problems. We brought back Chaz Green and Denzel Good, who, by the way, when the Raiders had those guys in last season, they looked a lot better. They got rid of Kelechi Osemele, who's broken down. They get a 5th-round pick for him, too. So they get rid of him. They bring back Denzel Good, Chaz Green, and they also get Trent Brown, the best offensive lineman in free agency and maybe in the NFL. Who knows? This guy's really, really good. We don't know where he's going to play, left side or right side. I know there's some beat reporters that are telling you, oh, he's definitely playing the right side. Listen, if John Gruden and Tom Cable don't know where he's playing, then a random beat reporter doesn't know where he's playing. That's nonsense. Now, I expect him to play at the right side because you drafted Colton Miller. The hope would be that Colton Miller becomes a legit left tackle because it's just, you drafted a guy in the 1st round. So that would be awesome. But if, let's say, they're doing training camp and Colton Miller is having a lot more success at the right side and Trent Brown's doing a lot better on the left side, do you think John Gruden's going to say, nope, we gotta make sure Colton Miller's on the left side no matter what, even if our quarterback is getting killed? No, he's gonna put the best players in the best position. That's just the way it works. So the Raiders, they know they needed help at safety. They go out, they get LaMarcus Joyner, probably the best safety. He is the best safety in free agency. They weren't done there, of course. They bring in a guy like Josh Morrow. Listen, Josh Morrow, he's not a superstar, but at least he's a defensive end, and Lord knows the Raiders need him. They don't got anyone on that depth chart right now besides Arden Key. So they bring in Josh Morrow, and we know they're going to bring in guys in the draft, so, not really that big of a deal. Hopefully they get someone who's dominant. A couple of guys, they don't need just one, they need a couple. Also, the Raiders cut Donald Penn. That was probably the best move besides cutting Seth Roberts they could have made. Donald Penn, this guy, fighting with fans. This guy's get rid of him. The Raiders then bring in Vontaze Burfict, a guy who's just a Raider. Vontaze Burfict, he reminds me of Bill Romanowski. This guy, he'll break your fingers, he'll spit in your face, he'll stomp on your head when you're down. You may call it dirty, I call it awesome. That's the kind of players I want. Nasty players. Those are he's a throwback of the 1970s Raiders. That's what Vontaze Burfict is. I don't believe in dirty players. What dirty players means to me is hard-hitting players that will do anything to get an advantage. And that's what I want on my team. And that's exactly what the Raiders went out and got in Vontaze Burfict. And a guy that knows Paul Guenther's system. That is very, very important. A linebacker that can put people in place. That can tell someone, hey, you're in the wrong position. Because last season, there were too many guys out of position. They had Leon Hall there that knew the system, but the guy's 100 years old. He couldn't get guys in the right place. You needed a linebacker. You need a linebacker that can tell the defensive end, that can tell the other linebackers, hey, this is where you're supposed to be. Vontaze Burfict was a perfect pickup for the Raiders. They weren't done there. They knew they had trouble in the secondary. Garyon Conley, bless his heart, the Raiders are not sold on. Now, this guy, he's not a shutdown corner. I hear fans say that all the time. That's just not true. Garyon Conley, hopefully, can be. But the Raiders also like Daryl Worley. But after that, you got Nick Nelson, who didn't have the best year last season, let's be honest. But we're hoping maybe he gets better, but they need a lot of players back there, especially in Paul Guenther's system. You need a lot of defensive backs. So they bring in Nevin Lawson, a cornerback who, listen, this guy, he's pretty good. He's going to go in there and he's going to test. He's going to test Garyon Conley and Daryl Worley. He really is. And I think at the end of the day, he could be the second cornerback listed on the depth chart. And remember, the draft is not here yet. And I just have a feeling the Raiders, if they stay, they might take a cornerback with that 24th or 27th pick. They also go out and get a free safety in Curtis Riley. No more Reggie Nelson. Curtis Riley can play free safety, and this guy can play it well. The Raiders, this is huge for them. They haven't had a great free safety in a long time. Now, Curtis Riley isn't, the top 5 free safeties in the NFL, but this is a guy that can play. This is a highly intelligent player, and he's so much better than Reggie Nelson. They also, of course, signed a bunch of backup quarterbacks, Mike Glennon and Landry Jones. Those are just backups, but I'll get into the quarterback situation in 1 second. They also signed Brandon Marshall from the Denver Broncos. Anytime you can take a player from a division rival, that is great. Just like I took Derek Johnson last season. He didn't pan out well. He didn't play well. But, you still get intel from them. And that's what Brandon Marshall will provide. Hopefully he still has some gas in the tank. He's still pretty young. Hopefully he can play at a high level. It will be perfect. This guy can play inside linebacker if you want him to. He can play outside too. You can do whatever you want with Brandon Marshall. The Raiders also went out and they signed running back Isaiah Crowell. Now, I don't ever speculate on Marshawn Lynch. Only fools do that. Or they make up stories and get busted later. We've seen that last season when Donald Penn wasn't talking to his teammates. Marshawn Lynch hasn't spoken to his coaches or teammates, which was a lie. I never speculate on Marshawn Lynch. I just don't. I would never do that. But, when you sign Isaiah Crowell and you also have guys in for visits that you plan on signing after the draft, you got the former Chiefs running back West, you got Robert Turbin from the Colts. Both of them visited the Raiders. Both of them were told after the draft the Raiders would be exploring to sign one of those guys. They got Jalen Richard. He's not going anywhere. You got Isaiah Crowell. You got Chris Warren, remember. And you got the draft coming up. What if they draft one of these guys like Jacobs or something in the late first round or the second round? I don't know if it leaves any room for Marshawn Lynch, to be honest. I just don't. I know Mark Davis certainly would want Marshawn Lynch back, but there just might not be room for him, or Marshawn Lynch just might not want to play. Remember, this guy's coming off groin surgery. It's not like, he's coming off a stubbed toe. He had a groin surgery. So we shall see with that. Like I said, I don't speculate on Marshawn Lynch, but I don't know. It's the writing's kind of on the wall there, but you never know. Also, the Raiders, with the Jared Cook thing, with him leaving, they go out and they sign Luke Wilson. This guy hasn't been good in a couple of years, but he was good with Tom Cable. So maybe Tom Cable knows the magic formula to make Luke Wilson good again. Also, remember, the Raiders do have Darren Waller. Darren Waller is a guy that really never got a chance. A guy that looks, he's a hybrid, man. This guy looks like he can be really good. Maybe the Raiders give this guy a shot. So you got Luke Wilson, Darren Waller there. Lee Smith is hanging around for now. He's still there. You got Paul Butler. I don't know, how is it, what's going to happen with Paul Butler, but, he looked okay in the preseason. I'm sure the Raiders are I'm sure they're checking him out very, very, very closely. Then, of course, like I said, they cut Seth Roberts, which was an excellent move. So there you have it. Those are all the names. Those are a lot of names. That is rebuilding a team. That's exactly what the Raiders did. And like I said, the draft is coming. And Gruden wants to win with his own guys. What will happen in a draft? No one really knows. Now, it seems logical that they are going to take a defensive end, but one might not be available when they pick. Remember that. A guy might not be there. So they might, who knows who's going to be there? I mean, Quinnen Williams. I mean, I know the Raiders love that guy. Could the Raiders take him, even though they have a ton of defensive tackles already? I mean, you have P.J. Hall, you have Mo Hurst, you have Jonathan Hankins, you got Justin Ellis. But Quinnen Williams is really, really good. Do the Raiders do something crazy, which has been speculated now for months, and take a quarterback? Now, let me give you my opinion. I think the Raiders need to take a quarterback in this draft. Because I just don't buy Derek Carr. And I know already, there are going to be Derek Carr fans that hate this. If I upload this thing on YouTube, they'll give it thumbs down like I care. They will get all upset about this. But listen, Derek Carr's been there since 2014. The Raiders had one winning season, and then he got injured. After that, what really has he done? I know he threw for 4,000 yards last season, right? All of those passes were dink and dunk passes. They're all yards after the catch. That's what they were. Derek Carr, first of all, I mean, this whole offseason has been bizarre. He has very thin skin. He has a brother named Darren. I'm sure you didn't know this, but he does. He has a brother named, not David, the one that was selected number 1 in the NFL draft. Not that guy. Another brother named Darren, a big Trump supporter, a guy, he's one of these guys that go to the Trump rallies probably. He's liking everything Donald Trump. This guy, I mean, I post something on Twitter that has nothing to do with Darren Carr, and all of a sudden this guy comes at me, and he's mad at me. He's really mad. So mad he blocks me over Derek Carr. Derek Carr, as you know, already called into ESPN to their Safe radio show with the one with Mike Golick on it. Obviously, he wouldn't call into First Take and Debate. He calls into the Safe radio show in the morning because he's mad because people are talking about him. That is not normal. How many quarterbacks do you see going around calling into TV shows and complaining that people are saying bad things about him? Oh, you said I lack toughness. I don't think he lacks toughness. This guy played with broken bones in his back. I think he lacks the talent. I think he's scared of getting injured, to be honest. That's not lacking toughness. But when I see a guy who doesn't slide in the pocket, doesn't scramble, doesn't do the things that John Gruden, the head coach, wants him to do, when it's 3rd and 4, and you can run for 8 yards, instead you throw it away and the team has to punt, and you already know your defense is so terrible, why wouldn't you just use your legs and run for those 4 yards? You could run and no one would even touch you. No one could even whisper to you. But he hasn't done it. I know he's dealt with a lot of injuries. And that's another reason why, listen, I would not be against the idea of drafting a quarterback. Now, if they got a quarterback, I still think Derek Carr would be the quarterback of 2019. Don't get me wrong. I think it would be an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation. A guy waits a year and then he takes over. The problem with that is, I don't know if Derek Carr will be able to handle that. I don't know if he's mentally tough to handle that. Now, I know he's physically tough, but is he mentally tough? The answer is no. This is a guy who, blocked me on Twitter. He blocks me on Twitter. I defended this guy year after year, and you're going to go and be like that, block me on Twitter? And your brother, Darren, the unsuccessful brother, the one where, people go up to his parents, oh, you're Derek Carr's parents, right? Yeah, and you're David Carr's parents. They both play in the NFL. Yeah, they don't even bring up Darren Carr. Do you have another son? Oh yeah, he's a high school football coach. How embarrassing. But Darren Carr knows everything. He knows a lot more than me, he says. He knows way more than me in football. Oh yeah, you think you do. You have no idea who I am, Darren Carr. You don't know anything about me. And you want to throw out weird things like, oh yeah, I have dirt on you, or I know exactly who you are. Really? Really? I know who you are. You're a Trump-loving guy who would never work in an NFL locker room because the players would hate you. That's the bottom line. And then you get your brother to block me. I cover the Oakland Raiders. I cover the team. Now, I really don't care. I actually take it as a badge of honor, to be honest, to be blocked by Derek Carr. But I just want to say this before I end the show. The last time a quarterback for the Raiders blocked me, it was Matt McGloin. 4 weeks later, Matt McGloin was gone from the Oakland Raiders. That's all I gotta say. All right, I will see you guys later. Thank you for listening. My name is Steven Michaels. This is the Raiders Daily.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.